So now, summing up, let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of low-carb diets. First of all, the good. Low-carb diets tend to eliminate refined carbohydrates, the white flour products, and the sugars like soda. They eliminate many highly processed foods which are damaging to health. That's good. The bad, they're high in fat, saturated fat, and cholesterol. They're high in pro-oxidants and chemical contaminants. They're low in fiber, phytochemicals, and antioxidants. They have many potential nutrition shortfalls, especially with a keto diet, like minerals and vitamins. And the ugly. Well, low carbohydrate diets are high animal food diets. They are both ecologically unsustainable and ethically unjustifiable. So let's talk about ecological sustainability. Low-carb diets essentially downplay the ecological crisis that makes eating lower on the food chain an ecological imperative. If our entire population ate a low-carb diet, our planet's dwindling resources would very quickly run dry. David Katz estimated that if we all ate paleo, we would need 15 planet Earths to sustain the current population with the amount of meat that would be required. In 2016, a study from the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences estimated that if by 2050, greenhouse gas emissions would be reduced by 29% if everybody followed the global dietary guidelines to eat more fruits and vegetables and eat less meat, sugar, and calories. They would be reduced by 70% if we all ate a vegan diet. Their recommendation, a global shift to a plant-based diet. There was another study that I thought was kind of interesting that showed a typical steak and shrimp cocktail dinner would burden the atmosphere with 816 kilograms of carbon dioxide emissions. This is the same as what would be produced by driving a relatively fuel-efficient automobile from LA to New York City. And finally, I want to end on this note. We need to, as human beings, think about the consequences of our food choices beyond ourselves. We need to think about the consequences for our fragile planet, but we have got a responsibility to also think about the ethical consequences of our choices. You know, when we think about it in terms of people, if everyone ate plant-based, the global calorie supply would be increased by an estimated 50%, which could effectively wipe out hunger. And for animals, that's the thing that we often don't talk about. And it, to me, makes no sense for us to cause incredible pain, suffering, and death in other living beings when it is not only unnecessary, we're destroying our own health and the health of the planet in the process. We slaughter 70 billion animals every year for food. Most of those animals are raised in CAFOs, or confined animal feeding operations. Probably in the United States, it's close to 90% of them. Now, I don't know about you, this isn't including anything from the ocean. Nothing from the ocean at all. So this is just land animals. 70 billion is almost 10 times the human population every single year. We raise and slaughter for our food. And you know, I'm not sure how we make the distinction, but when you think about, is it intelligence? How do we pick the animals that are going to be our food? You know, if we think about dogs and cats, most people are repulsed by the thought of eating them. But in fact, pigs are smarter than dogs. So it's not intelligence. Pigs are, the estimated intelligence of a pig is about a 3-year-old child. I remember studies being done in California that were looking at the pig's ability to play a game on a computer where they used their snout to move a joystick. And they said pigs, they couldn't teach dogs to play that game. And they said the pigs could actually not only play the game, but they never made a mistake. What they had to do was match two things on each side of the computer. And if they got it right, they got a treat. And they said no pig ever made a mistake. They said they tried to train a chimpanzee to do it. And the researcher actually looked at the chimpanzee and said, if you were a pig, you would have had this by now. So these are very, very intelligent animals that would live, 12 to 15 years? They live 6 months in hell. They live 6 months in these little stalls that are so small they can hardly move. The dust and dander in the place, the smell is so reprehensible that we have to wear a gas mask to go inside. Their smellers are 200 times more sensitive than ours. They go crazy in these places. So they sometimes chew one another's tails off because they're going insane. And so what do we do to prevent that? We cut their ears off, we dock their tails, we remove their genitals with no anesthetic when they're about 3 weeks old. And all of this so we can eat them when they're about 6 months of age. And they get transported to slaughterhouses, and it's estimated that 10 to 30% are inappropriately stunned and are actually skinned and boiled alive. These creatures are smarter than dogs. You know, how do we as human beings justify this? I don't get it. It's, you know, I think the only way that we justify it is we put a halo on it because it's tradition. You know, think about the things that we've justified under the banner of tradition for so many centuries that have been so wrong. And we have to stand up and be counted. When tradition is wrong, we need to change it. It's up to us. And so we need to be leaders in this regard. This is so important. The ultimate question is this: how can humans best adapt to their current environment to sustain a growing population on a shrinking planet? We as human beings have a choice. When we consider the consequences of our food choice, not just for ourselves, but beyond ourselves, a plant-based diet becomes an ecological and an ethical imperative. And I think this sums it up as well as anything. The keys to a long life: avoid fatty meats, eat your veggies, and get your daily exercise. And with that, I'll end. These are some of my books. My most recent one is actually the Kick Diabetes Cookbook. And because I have a minute, I'll just tell you I'm in the midst of a sequel to that book that's more an information, a larger book with a lot of information, fewer recipes, but about overcoming diabetes. And I will end with that. Just a very quick mention of a program I'm teaching at Living Light as well. So this is a more intensive nutrition program. And thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm very happy to take questions, of course. Rita.
That you are crown of crowns. Fabulous slides. You have left nothing for a chance. And as my colleague, I want to share this with you. Excellent slides. Thank you.
One from the other side.
Speak right in.
Thank you very much. That means a lot to me coming from you, Rita, who's not only a colleague, but a fellow of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And I'm honored that you're here. Thank you so much for those kind words. Thank you.
Thank you. I've been watching you on YouTube for about 15 months. I went plant-based 15 months ago, and the movie What the Health got me. But thank you for what you do. What do you say to somebody that says, oh, everything in moderation? What do you say to them?
Thank you for that question. You know, what I say to people who say everything in moderation is everything in moderation is reasonable if everything you're eating is relatively healthy. But everything in moderation, if you're eating things that are all killing you, will still kill you, just a little more slowly. You know, I can remember, and meaning no disrespect, but for years our national nutrition campaigns were built around the moderation message. You know, all foods can fit into a healthy diet. There are no good foods, no bad foods, everything in moderation. And I remember thinking to myself, here we are, dying. 70% of us are dying of a chronic disease, and we're trying to, tell people that, oh, deep-fried pork rinds are just fine, just so long as you eat them in moderation. That was not it's not the message people need to hear. The message people need to hear is eat more vegetables, eat more whole grains, eat more, eat healthy foods, eat less deep-fried foods, eat less meat. Those are the messages people need to hear. We need to be very careful of the moderation message, even though moderation generally makes sense in your life. If most of what you do is killing you, moderation will still kill you.
So I wanted to ask you about fasting because from your data, it seems that it's beneficial. So I was wondering, because I know that intermittent fasting is very big. It's probably just as big in the workout community as keto and paleo. So what are your feelings? I know that like intermittent fasting in the gyms, they always talk about like you could, do it. Because you said the benefits, if you stayed on a fast for like 3 days, you could get cell renewal. And so what are your feelings in terms of maybe doing a 3-day-a-week water fast and then eating a vegetarian-based diet for the balance of the week? So 4-3, as they would say in the gym.
Yeah, there's a 4-3, there's the 5-2, there's a 6-1. There's all kinds of ways of doing these intermittent fasts. Some people even do them where you're only fasting for a certain number of hours each day, so 12 or 14 or 16 hours, something like that. And these have become quite popular. And I think, generally do what works for you, what feels, we need to have some science base, but generally the evidence is fairly strong that sort of fasting or fasting mimicking diets could be of benefit, especially for people who are over-consuming. It reduces your level of consumption. And so whatever helps you to reduce your level of consumption may be of some value. Now, the thing that I would be concerned about is simply doing extended water fasting, because there are a lot of risks to water fasting. And I would prefer if somebody was doing water fasting that they do it under the supervision of a place like True North, for example. I think maybe what would be a reasonable compromise would be to do a juice fast or something where you're just limiting your calories pretty significantly, big salads, that kind of thing, and doing what they call a fasting mimicking diet, which is low calorie, or just doing the overnight, or maybe something not quite as 3-4, but maybe 5-2, and on those 2, do some green juices. Because what I'd like to see is your body loaded up with antioxidants during that time of reduced food intake. So you just be giving yourself quite an antioxidant boost. You also have to be a little conscious of preserving your muscle mass. And so I think to do something that's a little more modified would be a reasonable compromise. But definitely some significant therapeutic advantages to using those kinds of diets. For diabetes, for example, they can be quite powerful. Yes.
Just one quickly, I don't really know what this 4252 and all that is, but the general criticism I've heard about fasting by a doctor is that it's misguided because you need nutrients to drive the phase 1, phase 2 detox in the liver. And if you don't have it in fasting, the body tends to sequester those, so they're not available for the liver detox.
Yeah, so the concern is, well, what about all the nutrients you need to detoxify the body? And that's one of the reasons why I think, especially if you're doing it on your own, that you do some of the juicing to provide, or at least something to provide those nutrients, especially if you're, incorporating sprouts and such in your juices. You'll absolutely boost those kinds of phytochemicals that are really important for the detoxification pathways. But also, I think with pure fasting, with water fast, I think the evidence, and Dr. Furman is quite an expert in this area as well. He's speaking later today, so you may want to ask him as well. But we have some studies that show some very powerful therapeutic healing with fasting. And so, but my feeling is it does, when it's used, you need to be really monitoring your blood levels of everything to make sure that your body can handle it, and that you go off the fast if your body's not responding well. But I've seen some really dramatic improvements in people's health with fasting from a place like True North. That's where you do 4 days of eating, 3 days of fasting, or the 5-2 is 5 days of eating, 2 days of fasting. Some people don't completely fast, they just do a very low calorie diet or a juice fast during those 2 days. Exactly. Oh, I guess I'm sorry we have to end, but I'm going to be outside signing books, and I'm very happy to answer any questions out there.